Hello, everybody. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time it is where you are and where you're joining us from. Good evening from Denmark. Hello. Hope it's not too late for you over there. It's a nice 3 p.m. over here. I'll wait a couple of minutes as everyone trickles in, as usual. Off the top of our stream today, I will say I don't have coffee like I normally do. I have um I have peppermint tea. Good night from India. Hey, it's got to be super late for you over there. Hope it's not too late for you. I got a huge lesson. I gotta stop saying lesson, but maybe lesson is the right word. I don't know. I've got a huge lesson planned for us today. So we'll get started in just a moment. You may notice, perhaps I'll acknowledge this right off the bat, is you may notice we've got a slightly different setup than we normally do today. I've seen some comments about how stream recordings in particular, if you're watching these on YouTube, can look a bit wonky. And also like in stream as well, if you're watching on Discord, sometimes the it can be a bit difficult to see what's going on in the studio. So I tried to figure out a better way of managing the stream setup. But of course, if you have more feedback or suggestions, they're always welcome. So please let me know if you have trouble seeing or following along with what I'm doing. Otherwise, good evening from Poland. Hello from Portugal, Morocco. My goodness, I'm I'm so happy to see everyone from all over the world. That's the beauty of Botpress, right? Yeah, around the globe press. All right. I have so normally the way I run these is I've got usually some best practices or tasks or tips to run through with all of you. But I've got to just announce something right off the bat, which is super exciting to me. If you stuck around for last week's stream, if you watched how I did that, or if you watched our video on saving unanswered questions, there's a feature that I used called tables, which is really exciting. It's really powerful. There's tons of stuff you can do with tables that can kind of take your bot to the next level, let's say. And one feature that a lot of you were asking for, and if you know what I'm asking, if you know what I'm about to say, then you're very familiar with this. But a feature that a lot of people were asking about was exporting the information stored in a table to a CSV, or vice versa, right? Being able to import data from a table as well. And I'm really happy to say that it's already here. Let me just show you. So if I were to go to create a new table, um, oh, I think my stream may have frozen. One sec, please. I will be right back, but I think you can still hear me. Bum, bum, bum. This is so dramatic. It's kind of like this is the big reveal. Is I'll show you how to import and export from a CSV on Botpress. But yeah, we're back. And if you take a look here, so this is our brand new table. You can see we're exporting as a CSV. You can import things as a CSV from here. Very exciting new feature. I'm really thrilled to be able to offer this to all of you. I hope that this improves the functionality of your bots or allows you to do more exciting things. This was a feature that I think a lot of you had been asking for already. So I'm really pleased to be able to deliver on that now, which is great. So for example, if you took all those unanswered questions that your bot like wasn't able to answer, and you shared them with your company or your business partners, or even just yourself, if you're looking to improve the way that your bot provides information, I think that's it's a very exciting feature to have. So I want to say, first of all, thank you to our engineering team for delivering on this so quickly. That's actually bananas. And then also thank you to all of you for requesting it. I think when we all work together, we make Botpress a better tool to build with. So lots of exciting stuff going on. I'm really looking forward to seeing what all of you do with this tool and how you go from here. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. I wanted to share maybe a fun interaction I had over the weekend, and I promise it's Botpress related. This isn't just like Robert's diary, although it can be if you want it to be. But how do we search tables? That's for another time. I've got a separate lesson planned, but that's a great question. How do we search tables? But anyways, back to the story that I had from this weekend was so if you've been around here for long enough, you know that I fancy myself a bit of a gamer. That is certainly something I spend a lot of my free time doing. And part of gaming, if you're a gamer, you must know this as well, is getting people to play your game, but then also answering questions about that game. So answering questions like doing things like providing customer service. It's not that different. Oh, I think my stream may have frozen again. Let me 1 sec. Let me fix this up. Bum bum bum. But in any case, as you can all still hear me, where I was going with this was that all of the Dota 2 support chatbot. I mean, you're not that far off. I'm talking about a support chatbot for a different game. Um, but yeah, it's ultimately we're talking about the same thing. All right, we're going old school here, and maybe I'll figure out the rest of the stuff separately. Hey, I'm back. Yeah, Dota 2 support chatbot. I mean, so let me show you how I built a very incredibly simple chatbot for my favorite video game of all time, Grand Blue Fantasy. And the reason I'm showing you this is because we tend to lean, like a lot of you are building your chatbots for business or they're for business purposes. But what I will say is that chatbots don't have to be just for a business. I think in the theory here is like if you're managing any kind of website, um, there's probably something that a chatbot can do for you. So, for example, this should be common practice to most of you by now. But what I'll start this chatbot design with is just a simple question. So I'll say, "What is your question?" I'll make sure that knowledge answering is enabled on this node, so my bot will query a knowledge base, and that means, of course, that we need a knowledge base. So we go to add knowledge base. And for knowledge base source, I'm going to place, I mean, just huge shout out. This is a big plug for one of my favorite websites of all time. This is a fan run wiki for my favorite video game ever, and it's just completely run by volunteers. And the thing I love about Botpress is that you don't have to pay for this yet. So until you see a lot of usage, this is completely free. So if you're running like a fan-made service or you're running something where maybe you don't necessarily have the budget before testing it out, you can see that it's going to be providing value for yourself. So we go back, we make sure that it's answering from the knowledge base, and we check it out here. And I'll just ask a question that, for example, I get a lot on like from other people playing this game. And you can see here, it provides us relevant information about this video game. Braxton, I did something similar for a D&D server my friend runs. Yeah, that's awesome. I see D&D is like that's a very big portion of people that are like the Venn diagram of people that build on Botpress and play video games. I think D&D is right in the middle. Bad connection. Oh, I'm sorry. We might have bad Wi-Fi here in this office, which I think is ironic. So if you're on the Botpress team and you're watching, can you let me know if the connection is bad, and perhaps I'll troubleshoot. Um, Otherwise, I just wanted to start off really quick with a really simple knowledge base query bot. But the point here is you can do a ton of things with it outside of business. So I think we tend to think of chatbots as being something like customer service oriented. And as true as that is, I really love seeing all of these creative projects, your productivity projects. I love seeing like students who are using Botpress to study better. Particularly, maybe this is not something a lot of you want to hear, but as the school year is upon us, I love seeing like college students doing things like back to school with Botpress or that kind of stuff. It really excites me because the point here is that we're building a tool that is useful for the widest amount of people as possible, and not just a customer service tool, like more than a website or more than a customer service chatbot. Those are the kind of bots you build with Botpress, which is really exciting to see. They could be nerdy ones like this, in video game related or otherwise. All right. So that was the that was the uh, that was the small story from Robert's weekend that I wanted to share with you. But I do see a good question in chat. Can we talk about KBs and tables? Can we use tables as a knowledge base? Not yet. I think I might have mentioned this before, but it's probably worth repeating just because let's keep this conversation going. So the question here is, can I use a table as my knowledge base? So let's say I've imported a CSV and I want to query that knowledge base or query that table that I've imported and use it to spit out information. Currently, that's not possible because that isn't the way that we built tables was separate from knowledge bases. However, we have heard you and we know this is something that you're asking for. So the first thing that I will say is I've shown you previously how to use the insert record card, and I'm going to do that again in a minute. I got a question this weekend that was really great. But what I would first start by is saying get record can also work in this function, right? I'll upload separate videos, and I see that this is a concern. But I'll upload separate tutorials about using the get record card. So this is about pulling information from the knowledge base. Previously, I've shown all of you how to insert information into the knowledge base or store information in the knowledge base or in the table rather using insert record. And so in the future, what we can talk about is the get record, right? Is pull that information out from a table. For extra storage and KB requests, is there a timeline for this waitlist? As most things startup related, I'm going to say like I can't give you a timeline just because we don't know that like full transparency. It's not like we have this information and we don't share it. It's just that different things take different amounts of time. And if I had an answer for you, I would give you one, but unfortunately, I can't. Okay. Also, one thing I wanted to mention, like right off the top here, is this is the basics office hours. We're talking about getting started with Botpress and doing like early stage stuff. So also, if you're watching this, and perhaps if you're watching a YouTube recording as well later on in the future, and you're saying to yourself, "Hang on a second, the I don't even know what a table is. I haven't even built a bot yet, let alone get started with my table." Yeah, that's totally normal. This is you're in the right place. We haven't skipped you over. But all of these things are connected. Okay, so back to our, again, regularly scheduled programming. I had a question over the weekend about saving answered questions. So my user said to me, look, it's great that you can save unanswered questions to a table. If you are not familiar with what I'm talking about, there's a great video that I posted on our YouTube channel, on the Botpress YouTube channel, about saving unanswered questions. But they were like, I want to know everything that my users are asking, and I want to be able to save questions that my bot was able to answer. And this was, first of all, a phenomenal question. So I want to say right off the top, never be shy to ask questions, no matter how silly you think they are, or if you think they're pretty obvious. Because chances are, if you have a question, a billion other people have as well. And so the question was, how do I save answered questions? And it's really a great question because I think what it illustrates is what this person was asking was not how do I save answered questions? What they were asking was how do I make sure that a Boolean variable is represented as true and not false? But the thing is, not everyone is a programmer. I am not a programmer. It took me like months of practice to even be able to say what I just said. And that's fine, right? Like Botpress doesn't have to be just for programmers, it's for everyone. So let me illustrate what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to start by uploading a knowledge base as usual. So the example that we're going to be illustrating here is I have a knowledge base and I'm not able to answer questions from it. This is pretty standard practice. So this is what I'm doing is exactly what I did in that YouTube video. So how to save unanswered questions. This was another thing that a lot of people had asked about. While I wait for this to upload, the insert record card could already have an output data with the record ID. To get it, we need to use create record through code card. You can insert record without using the execute code card. I'm actually about to show that in a sec, if that's what you're asking. If that's not what you're asking, please feel free to ask again. But okay, so we have our knowledge base here. This is the classic example that I've been using this whole time. So I'll start with a simple example. I'll start with a knowledge base query. I'll make sure that knowledge answering is enabled on my node. And then, of course, I will say if my user wasn't able to answer this question, I'll go to this node. Now, I do need to show off here, of course, the quick reference guide. This was new from last week. So if you haven't been around for about a week, maybe you were on summer break, this is new. But this is a collection of frequently used formulas and variables. So we just use this variable to check if your bot was or wasn't able to answer from a knowledge base. So I'll just pop it in here, and we'll go over this usage in a sec. So I'll label it not able to answer, and we know it goes there. Now, of course, the whole purpose of this demonstration is that we're storing these unanswered questions in a table, so we need that table. So I'll call it unanswered questions, and I'll just name the question here. So when we pop up add card, insert record, we select our table, and then we can just input the question here. What I just did was I made sure that the question that my user asks is saved to the variable called user question, and I'm just inputting it here. So from soup to nuts, what's happening here is our user asks a question, our bot queries the knowledge base. If it wasn't able to answer from the knowledge base, it stores that question in this table here. Okay, great. So this is where my user was, and they were like, okay, this is fine, and I got this to work, and all that's great. But what do I do if my bot was able to answer a question, but I still want to know the answer to that question? So the problem they were running into was that their user asked a question, good. They were able to answer from the knowledge base, good. So this expression wasn't being triggered, and they were like, well, I wanna know the answer to this question. So it's very simple. We're doing the exact same thing, but what's happening is we're just not going to negate the variable. And if you don't know what that means, that's fine, because I will show you now. So we'll take another expression card and we'll pop that same variable in, the one that checks if our bot was or wasn't able to answer from a knowledge base, but I'll place it here without an exclamation mark. So look at the difference between these two nodes or these two cards. We have not able to answer, where that variable is being negated with an exclamation mark, and we have is able to answer, where that variable is not being negated. So what's happening here is we're learning a programming adjacent thing dynamic without actually learning any programming. So here, if the bot was able to answer, it'll just skip this expression. It'll just skip this transition card and move right along to this one. So now let's create another table and we'll call it answered questions. You could do this in one question, but in one table, but I prefer to do it in two. And we'll call this one question A. And we'll just follow the exact same process. And in a sec, I'll demonstrate this whole bot. So again, from soup to nuts, you can see that it works. And here, of course, we're going to use the same variable because the user question hasn't changed whether it's answered or not. So let's give it a shot. So I'll start here. I'll ask it something that I know it can answer. If you've watched the Botpress YouTube videos, you should know the answer to this question already too. This is the same example I use all the time because I know it's going to work. I'll reset that. And now I'll ask it a question that I know it can't answer. Because there's no way a writer in England in 1859 would have known what a burrito was. Wouldn't have happened. And so let's pop over to our tables. We see the answered question correctly. That's good here. And we see the unanswered question correctly. And that's good as well. Going to be implementing tables in my chatbot. Yeah, that's really the purpose, right? Is we want you to be using these features, and if they're not useful for you, then please let us know. What kind of things you would need in order to improve the performance. Then, yeah, Remo, as David says, we don't stream on YouTube. We stream on Discord, but we do post the recordings after to YouTube. So you can take a look at that after. But again, if you'll allow Robert his soapbox, if you're like a regular on these streams, you know that I have a very big soapbox. But I thought this was a really great question because the user was asking me not how do I do this programming thing, but they were asking me how do I achieve this task within Botpress. But in doing so, we were able to together come to a conclusion that was teaching them something programming related or adjacent to programming. So we were able to teach them the concept of a Boolean variable, right? This isn't just a formula that you're using. This is the ability to negate something. So store it as true or false, and then denote true or false by the use of an exclamation mark. Those are things that maybe theoretically or abstractly might be difficult to grasp, but when you see it here like this, in terms of not able to answer and then able to answer, for me at least, it makes it a lot more intuitive. So again, if you've heard me say that building on Botpress also teaches you things adjacent to programming, this is one of them. This is one of those examples. So I'm hoping that these types of things make building on Botpress more productive for all of you in the future, and then also more instructive. Maybe you'll upskill yourselves, which is always fun. Okay, I'm gonna move right along from talking about my weekend, as fun as that is, because I do have a full lesson planned for the rest of us today. So this was a question I saw earlier today, actually. So if you're the person that asked this question earlier in today's help channel or general channel, please pay close attention because this one is shout out to you. But the question, and perhaps this is a question that many of you have also faced, but the user wanted to know, can I select multiple choice in Botpress? So we have a multiple choice card where you can choose one or many. And a lot of the time it feels like I'm making my user pick just one of these choices, and the bot will move right along. And so perhaps the best way to understand this is I'll just illustrate it for you here. So I'll show you the multiple choice card here. I'll say choose some toppings, and then I'll add some choices. So I'll say cheese, onion, tomato, and then pepper. So of course, this person is ordering a pizza and they want to choose multiple toppings naturally. I'm not including anchovies because I have taste. No, I'm just kidding. But if I say hi, and then you'll see what happens here. And if you've built on Botpress for a bit, you know what's about to happen. But if I click tomato, then my user is just they've selected only tomato and they haven't selected anything else, right? But the bot will move the conversation right along. A lot of you have asked, like, is this a bug or is this something that's not working properly or am I not doing this right? And the answer is like no. There's no like right or wrong way to do this, and it's certainly not a bug. But let's talk about it for a sec. Again, let's talk about limitations or constraints. So Botpress bots were designed to be deployed on a number of channels. So this includes things like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and Instagram. And not all of those venues or deployment channels support the ability to store temporary information, i.e., the choices that your user's making, the order that they're making for their pizza, and then spit it back out to them. So the ability to, if we're presenting you with buttons on like WhatsApp, for example, you can't choose multiple of them. So we designed the Botpress bots in a way that mimics that so that your experience is consistent regardless of where your bot is deployed. So you might be saying to yourself, okay, but that's great and that makes sense. But how do I choose a pizza with multiple toppings if the multiple choice card only supports this kind of button-based input? It's a great question. Let me show you. So first off, what we have to do is make sure that our answer gets saved to a variable, which I'll call topping. Super simple. And maybe what I want to draw all of your attention to, if I'll zoom in here, is look at my variable workflow.topping. This is not the symbol for a string. A string in programming terms just means like text, so just text input. That's not what we see here. What we see here is the variable symbol or variable icon for an array. An array is multiple choices. So there's multiple list options going on here. And so this is what we want. So the first step here is to store our user's answer in a variable array. Okay, but then how does the user give us that information? Well, again, this is the whole point of Botpress being powered by natural language understanding, is not everything needs to be button-based. There's research showing that users respond worse to button-based input, but of course it depends on your situation. But anyways, let me show you. When you go to order a pizza, you might say something like, I'd like cheese, onion, and tomato, please. And then, if we see here, our bot was able to capture the variable topping. So how do I know I want to verify that I'm able to order the correct thing. So I'll just send them a message and I'll say, great, your toppings are, and then we say workflow dot topping. See it right here. Hello. And so let's try that one more time. So we'll say, hi, I'd like cheese, onion, and tomato, please. And so we see, great, your toppings are cheese, onion, tomato. So our bot is recognizing the sentence that our user has written, translated it into information that they can understand, and stored the information as this array or this group of multiple text options, cheese, onion, and tomato. And now that's a variable, as I've shown here, that you can refer to in other parts of your bot's flow. So exciting stuff. Powerful stuff that's been there from the start, but is perhaps like less intuitive than it could be. So if you have suggestions on how to make the multiple choice options clearer, the conversation design in me might say something like, choose some toppings, and then you might want to prompt your user to input a full sentence. So choose some toppings using a full sentence, or we can say using natural language. So on and so forth. So the idea here is to get your user to understand that these aren't the bots that they were interacting with from like 2015. They can use natural language and your bot will be able to understand it from the start. I'll take a pause here to address some questions from chat. If I'm making as fallback for knowledge base a custom LangChain responder with your model and data acting as agent, your chatbot's set to Spanish, will it translate on the fly when message comes back from API and is en route to user? I'm not sure I understand all of the intricacies of your question. I think the idea here is that with the improved translator agent, your bot should be able to recognize when it should be translating messages. It might have some difficulty doing that with if you're receiving information from a third-party API. But what I'm going to say is maybe just trial and error that. And if you run into a specific issue, then maybe we can help you debug that. But in theory, your bot should be able to recognize translating messages as appropriate if you've set the user language or if it's detected the user language at some initial step. Okay, so back to our example here. So we've stored information as a variable here. How do I know that it did that though? How I want to be like 100% sure that my bot is storing information in the correct way. I want to be 100% sure that I know what's going on, and I don't want to have to verify using a send message card because maybe that doesn't make sense in the conversation I'm designing. Let me show you. So this is a tool that, again, if you're perhaps new to Botpress or you're new to programming in general, and you're like, I don't need to debug anything. That's for programmers. That's not for me. I would say that you and I are very similar. That's certainly a frame of mind that I was in myself. Also, because if you've used, I'll give away the secret here, but if you use the old version of the Event Debugger, it can be a bit, let's say, intimidating. So we made some changes last week to the Event Debugger to make it both easier to use and also easier to understand what exactly your bot is doing. So to understand, why it's making certain decisions, why it might be sending the same message a couple times in a row, even though maybe you didn't ask it to, or what information is being stored to what variable. So let's take a look without further ado. You pop it open here at the bottom of the screen, and you can keep it open with that pin icon. I did upload a video to our YouTube channel about going into greater detail about using this, but I'll show you here. So we see this is the summary of our conversation. We've got a very simple conversation going here, and then we've got capture information topping. And so here in variables, we can see that the array has stored three options: cheese, onion, and tomato. And it's stored that from this natural language message that I sent to my bot. So I'd like cheese, onion, and tomato, please. So if you're watching this and you had been asking yourself, how do I support multiple choice cards in Botpress? I want to be able to let my user choose multiple options, despite the fact that maybe, I can't use the button-based input, and that's fine. The Event Debugger is going to show you here what's happening. So let's walk through these step by step, because what I'm trying to get all of you to understand is I want to get all of you in the habit of checking the Event Debugger. We're super happy to help you debug live on Botpress, and that's great. And we love seeing all your questions in the channel. But of course, sometimes we sleep. Right, like in the middle of the night and stuff. There are certainly times where we're asleep and maybe we can't get to your question as fast as we can. But if you have checked the Event Debugger, you might be able to self-serve on your own. So as much as we love helping you, wouldn't it be easy, no sleeping allowed? Well, we'll see about that. Several people are typing. Ooh, that was inflammatory, I guess. But the point here is we really want to give you the tools in your hands that can help you build better bots yourself without having to involve us in the process. Not because we don't want to be there, but because I feel very strongly that good software, you should be able to do it on your own, right? There are different words that we call this, maybe self-serve, maybe like independence. Earlier, somebody that I work with used the term autodidact, which I thought was a great word. You should be able to do that yourself. And we want to give you the tools to do that on your own. Delafin, the debugger, has saved me when my code fails and my chatbots. Yeah, that's great. I want to see more of this, right? I want to see more people being able to solve their own problems using the debugger. And if the old version of the debugger wasn't working because it wasn't clear enough, then it's on us to make it better for you all. So let's walk through some cleaner things. So we see capture information. We see what's happening here. Extraction successful, value, cheese, onion, tomato. The extracted information was stored in the variable topping. When we pop down to the variables setting or menu down here, we can see what it's storing those options as. So right away, we see if it's getting the right information. And we can see more detailed information here in this tab called logs. If you want incredibly detailed information, you can go over to the tab called logs here. And you can see here at literally every single step what your bot is doing, why it's doing it. And this makes it easier for you to understand like at what specific point if your bot has been making a mistake or maybe it's not behaving in the way that you expected it to. You can understand why here. And also, it's color coded. So again, I'm not a programmer, but and so if you're a programmer, you're a developer, or you're on the Botpress team and you built this, and the feature I'm most excited about is that it's color coded. I'm sorry, but it's very exciting to see things that are color coded. I do love that. My brain loves that. So I'm hoping that all of you find the new version, the updated version of the debugger useful. Equally, if there's other things you want to see in the debugger or in the logs of your bot, if there are better ways that you think we can provide this information to you or information that's missing here that you wanted, do just let us know because we pay attention to all of your feature requests, and then we just build them if we feel like they make sense, right? And so on and so forth. So we're building bots together, and we're all trying to do that in the best way possible. Can we check the event debugger logs for a deployed bot? Let's say we have a table storing unanswered queues, but then want to check the logs to see why it failed to answer the questions. Can we use logs? This is a beautiful question. You are, again, not the first person to have asked this. And that the ability to check logs for bots in production, so a deployed bot, is definitely something that we're in the process of working on. So I hope you take solace in the fact that you are right on the money by asking that question. Again, you're not just building bots in the emulator, right? A lot of you are building bots that are out there in the wild interacting with people. But I see F in chat is saying you actually can. So I mean, if this is possible, perhaps this is possible. But as far as I'm aware, I don't know. In any case, bum bum bum. I'm just catching up on the rest of chat here. Would be even more cool if you could explain a bit the intents thing. Use intents as filter on every loop in out to have separate route for users. Oh, it works eight times out of 10, but not sure how to make it better. So what I would start with is take a look at the videos we have on our YouTube channel about using and creating intents. There are a couple on there. And then if you've got more specific questions about what's going wrong, then just pop them in our help channel. So Trollface, if you, what a name. If you're running into specific problems with intents, I would say it's easier to help you if you come to us with like, hey, this is the exact problem I'm running into, and then we can help you out. Yes. Okay. So so F has showed you how to get the logs for bots in production. That lives in the admin dashboard. So nobody look at my bookmarks, but I can just show you here. So it's just over here. So I'm assuming you're all familiar with this page, and if you pop over to your logs, you can see them here. And so this will update. Is this new, or did I just not know this? But in any case, phenomenal stuff. All right, let's get back on track for this lesson, everybody. So what I showed you was how to use capture cards to store multiple choice options. Yeah, always been there. I've always been here too. We've shown you how to store multiple choice options on capture cards. I think the classic example for this is how to store pizza toppings, right? But let's maybe get like a bit more in depth, and maybe I'll show you how to use the first name last name option because this was a question I also see a lot. So people are wondering how to actually manipulate the first and last names of your user to make it feel more natural. So in the capture information here, I'm going to choose a capture card. I will prompt my user for their name, and then we'll go from there. So person name, drag it into my card, and I'll just say something like, what is your name? Now, before I continue with this, the use case for this is like sometimes you want to refer to your users by their first name, sometimes by their last name, perhaps both. But the idea is you could just store this as a string. So you could just do a raw input card and say what name and store that variable string. But sometimes users are asking like, okay, but I just want the first name. Like maybe I'm designing like a role play bot or like a choose your own adventure bot. And sometimes I want to use their last name and sometimes I want to use their first name. And I want a way to ask them that's more natural than just what is your first name and what is your last name? Because that doesn't sound great. So let me show you that here. So I'll save the variable to something called username. And I'll use my own name here. Well, I'll call myself Robert Soup. And so we captured the variable username. And so of course, I'm going to show you through the event debugger what just happened. So I'll pop it open here in the event debugger. Bum, bum, bum. Let's take a look. So we see capture information, extraction successful, value, first name Robert, last name Soup. The extracted information was stored in the variable username. Cool. Okay, let me show you, maybe we can recreate together where our users were sometimes running into problems. So a typical best practice that I do, particularly when I'm building a bot or I'm starting with a brand new one, is I will send a simple send message card that shows me the variable that I stored the answer in. So in this case, that would be workflow.username. And right away, when I test this in the emulator, you'll see what's going on. So if I say that my name is Robert Soup, we get this weird bracketed notation that's showing me that my first name is Robert and my last name is Soup. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. I didn't need you to tell me that in that way. And this is because, like I said earlier, we're storing the first name and last name separately. But this is maybe something that I don't think we show to you, our users, in a super intuitive way. So let me show you how to access just the first name. So again, I'm going to keep that there so we make sure that we're collecting the right information. And in this card, I'm going to just send the variable workflow.username.first. And so remember, this should work, right? Hopefully. So this might be .first.last. Yeah, exactly. .first.last will give you the answer here. But I saw so many questions about this over the weekend, particularly. So I wanted to address this on stream, especially for like, again, the 1,000 of you that joined over the last couple of days. So let's show you here. So if I say hi, and then once again I say Robert Soup, we see my first name is Robert and my last name is Soup. So if you wanted to use these variables in future and you wanted to reference the first name and the last name, you can just append .first and .last to the end of this. And I wonder if this is maybe a use case, again, for like the quick reference, for example, where we might be able to add something like .first or .last or workflow.variable name .first to access the first name or last name. But what's happening here is the username input card will automatically segment your user's name into those two pieces. So let me close this out, and I'll just catch up on chat while I prepare our next topic. Could you guys go over some good tips for knowledge bases? Stuff like best formatting, allowed formatting, when to use documents versus pages, page versus search for websites. Yeah, this is a really great question. I think you're gonna hate this answer, but I think that first and foremost, the best way, so when to use one versus another, is just gonna depend on your use case. If you have 100,000 PDF or like 100 PDF articles or 100 like blog pages on your website, it might not make sense to input URLs by themselves, because that's going to be a huge time sink on your part. And if you have the sitemap available, then that's great. If you have a bunch of files and you would prefer to store them all on a website that your bot can then search, that might be easier for you. So again, the thing I'm going to say here is like there's no right or wrong way to build a bot as long as it's working for you. I don't think this is a very satisfying answer, but I think there is certainly the instinct, and this is the correct instinct, is to say, what's the optimal way to do this? Or what is the best way to do this thing? Or how am I going to run into the least problems when I'm doing this thing? And that's true for really simple tasks, like how do I drive from point A to point B in the shortest line, right? That's just a straight line. That's the optimal way to do it. But everyone's drive is going to be different. So in your bot building journey, you might need to use one knowledge base format over another. For stuff like best formatting and allowed formatting, what I'm going to say is if it's clear to you, it's clear to your bot. And if it's not clear to you, then it's not clear to your bot. Or if it's clear to another person, the clearer it is for you, the clearer it'll be for your bot. That's kind of like a best practice or a rule of thumb. But definitely the ability to improve your bot's knowledge base queries and the results that it spits out is something that I'm working on separately. So it's like definitely a big chunk for a stream, but know that it's something. You're not the only one to ask this question. So I think it bears some repeating. Okay, I again tangented for a while. So Johnny, I did the same thing but differently using an AI task. Check to see if there's a first name supplied. Oh yeah, that's interesting as well. Johnny, I'm gonna say if you have maybe some free time, I don't want to make assumptions about your free time, but if you have free time and you want to maybe show a tutorial or share some information about how you did this, we have a tutorials channel here on the Discord server. I think some people would love to see why you did this and how you did this. So I mean, I know I would. So if you feel like sharing, do just share a picture of your bot and whatnot. Yeah, cool. Question about intents. If I'm trying to capture intents regarding food options and someone extracts multiple intents in one message, like a multiple choice card, what would be the best way to capture all of the expressed intents from a single message? The reason I wanted to don't use a multiple choice card is due to the high number of options. Hey, Brennigan. Okay, so this is a good question. I think I understand. So is what you're asking me, I have an input card and I'm requesting input from a user and they're saying something, but they're triggering multiple intents. What do I do? Is that correct? I'm going to wait to answer your question until you follow up with this. But is that like you have one question that you're asking them, but it's triggering more than one of your intents? I see you typing. If you're watching the stream recording of this on YouTube, first of all, hello from the past or hello in the future. Hope everything is cool where you are. But I source a lot of questions for these streams from our Discord server. So if you're watching this recording in the future and you're wondering, hey, why is he taking a pause here? It's because I'm interacting with people live. So would love to have you on our Discord server. I would love to have you join us in a stream live sometimes. We stream live twice a week, one for like our basics, low coders, and one for our developers on Thursdays. We've got separate roles on stream to be pinged whenever these start if you're interested in that kind of thing. Or if you just want to hang out with the Botpress team or other bot builders, that's we hang out live. We have a good time. I will also say at this current juncture, it is August 22nd. We're almost at 10,000 members on our Discord server, which is bananas. This is information that you can just check on the Discord website, so you all know this. But that it's so exciting to see that there are so many people out of you building bots and having fun with each other and helping each other live. So I think that's really exciting. Um, love that stuff. Okay, Brennigan has responded. The issue is it's only triggering one intent from what I can tell. When I would like it to trigger multiple, say I have a menu of 30 different food options and they want to order four different options, how would I be able to parse their message and store their option into an array variable? Brennigan, I'm not sure if you were on the stream for the example I just showed. Probably I can just show it again. You wouldn't use intents for that because what the intent does, and maybe I'll illustrate that point here, is your bot is going to go it's going to resolve these cards vertically. So what it's doing is it's checking, is this intent matched? If this intent was matched, then it's going to move your user immediately to the next place. So it's not going to be checking for any of the nodes that you have down here. So it's impossible to trigger multiple intents at the same time. So right off the bat, we're using a different feature for this. So what I'll show you is the example I just showed. So if you have a multiple choice card, and I'm asking my user to pick one or many toppings. So I'll say cheese, onion, tomato, pepper. In your example, you say 30. I'm gonna start with 4, and I'm gonna have my user answer 2. What I'll say is restart this. I'll say hi, and I'll say I want cheese and tomato. And you'll see here it's captured the only two that I said, right? So I'm not using intents to do this. I'm using a multiple choice card to capture these variables. Let's make sure that it's working using everybody's favorite new and improved tool, the Event Debugger. So let me pop it open here. If I show you the conversation, summary here on the left panel, I click into capture information topping. We see that the extraction was successful. So the value is cheese and tomato. And I'll zoom in so you can see this clearly. So the extracted information was stored in the variable topping. So Brennigan, this is what you're trying to do. You have multiple options. You want your user to respond with a subset of those options, but not just one. Brennigan, I hope this helps you. I think this is what you're trying to do. So you wouldn't be using intents for this. You would be using a multiple choice capture card and storing those results in an array. If that sounds like a very complicated sentence to you, like it does to me, think of it just like you're asking them to say what they want, which is ultimately what you're doing. Intents are related to moving a user along a path. And maybe the final way that I'll illustrate that is if we open our card tray here on the left-hand panel, you'll see that intents are located in the flow logic section. And so what this means is when you're determining when your bot is determining where and when to send your user down a certain path, this is what it's checking for. So if you're not trying to do that, then maybe the intent is not really the correct card to be using there, or maybe we can use something else. Okay, Brannigan, hope that answers your question. Let me know in chat. I see you typing. Does Botpress auto-translate input KB docs to English before vectorizing, like I upload docs in UA? Okay. I actually don't know at what stage the translation happens. I want to say that we don't translate source documents for knowledge bases, um, but I mean, maybe this is like that internet thing where the best way to get a correct answer is to say the wrong thing. There we go. Okay. So we don't translate KB docs. Everything happens after your user has initiated a conversation, let's say. Bum. Hi, is it possible to jump between nodes without transitions lines, e.g. if you enter S to go to start? This is a great question. Currently, that's not possible. So David has answered your question right there. You can create a transition in every node so that if a user types S, it gets transitioned to the beginning. So what David is talking about there is using intents. And then you can just place one in every single one of your nodes to say, hey, if you do this, can I send you back to the very beginning of the bot conversation? I will maybe I'll pop here for I'll stop here for a second. I'll address this because I think this is a question a lot of you have. Is kind of the desire for this like ripcord feature or the ability for your user to say anything and then go right back to the start. Um, this is an interesting dilemma. I'm curious to know if any of you have like can you provide me with an example of why you want this to be possible? I don't even know if this is possible, but I'm really curious about this because I know this is something that multiple people have asked about, the ability to kind of just pull this ripcord and send my user back to the beginning of the conversation. Um, yeah. So if you're in chat, I see several people are typing, which always makes me wonder about what I've said. Always makes me a little bit self-conscious. Have I said a good thing? Have I said a bad thing? Only time will tell. You could put in an option and loop back to start. Yeah, you could. I think the idea is like, can this happen on every node? Do I feel like I'm going to be encountering card bloat if I'm putting an intent card in every single node? I think it's possible. Um, maybe as you're all typing, I see again, this is hilarious to see, but several people are typing. Brannigan, the only issue I can see is with the multiple choice card due to the high number of options being listed, where there's 10 plus options in a single message. Maybe that's not as big of a problem for the end user. You bring up a really good point. I mean, if somebody is presented with 30 options, that can be overwhelming, but I think that's going to be overwhelming regardless of how you present them as information. So, what I'll say is perhaps we might be thinking about something like um, conversation design in these terms. So it's less about what is my bot able to do and more about how did I get to the point where I'm presenting my user with a list of 30 options? And is there maybe a better way to give them this information? I think we all know this to be true whenever you're presented with a list of, for if you're me, anything more than 3 options and you're like kind of overwhelmed and I need a minute. Um, so I think the question here might be like, is there a better way to give them that information rather than change the functionality of your bot altogether? Sometimes there's not, and that's fine. But we'll see. Yeah, no problem. F says at some point I had to implement a menu or a hey bot, what can you help me with? Ooh, that's again, so what you might do in that example, maybe I'll illustrate this as well. Um, so if you're new to Botpress or if you're watching the recording and you're new to Botpress, let's make an intent. So here in my library here at the top, I'll just create a new intent and let's just call it menu. And I'll say something, I'll add some utterances. So like go to menu, main menu. I want to go to the menu. What can you help me with? What else can you help me with? Show me the menu. Menu, please. Menu now. Just menu. Give me menu. Always makes me laugh when I have to type a bunch of utterances. And so what you might do, for example, is in your bot's conversation here, you might just place an intent card, choose from your library, add the menu intent, and loop back to your menu node here. So this is one way that you could potentially be doing this. But I'm going to say there are other ways that you could do this. Again, if this is a feature that you're really desperate for, we do have a feature requests channel here on our Discord server. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube in the future, and you really feel strongly that we need a feature here in Botpress, the first place we source those kind of roadmap ideas from is from the feature requests channel. Let me catch up on questions here. I'm working on a customer support chatbot, and if the user requests a human at any point in the conversation, I'd like to pull them into a separate workflow that connects to a human. Yeah, again, this is like if you go on feature Narrator, I've seen you around before, so I'm sure you know this. But this is one of the big feature requests, if not the biggest request currently working on. This is called human in the loop, as we say in industry terms, or just you might also call it like live agent handoff, which always makes me think of like a sport. I'm handing things off to you. I'm doing like a this is the universal gesture for sport, yes. But in any case, we are working on this, so please just stay tuned. Football season is starting. What's football? No, I'm kidding. We are working on the ability to hand off a bot conversation to a live agent, so just stay tuned for that. But again, you're right on the money with that question. That's absolutely correct. Okay. When generate utterances? Carolyn, great question. We have the ultimate utterance generator, and it's called your brain. No, I'm kidding. The ability to generate utterances via AI, right? The ability to generate similar phrases is certainly something. Again, these are all things on the roadmap, so it's really nice to see that we're all coaling around these similar issues or similar requests. But for now, I'll just go old fashioned. I'll call it Robert GPT, as I like to say. Okay, I do want to say a couple of things. One, we're just at the 10-minute mark left for our stream. So if you have any final questions that you want me to address, just pop them in chat now. We've got 10 minutes left. As you're getting those questions ready, again, I see several people typing. I'm just going to finish with one last example that I hope some of you will find useful. So the idea here with the example I'm going to show you is how to check if a certain variable is equal to or a certain value is at a place for a certain value. So I'll start by setting the scene for all of you. So let's say you work in B2B SaaS, like all of us, and you're only interested in funneling leads to your account executive, your sales team, if the company has over 50 people. If they're less than 50 people, maybe they don't have the buying power, and so it's kind of just a waste of your time at that point. What do we do? Well, your bot can help with this. So let me show you. So first, I'll start by saying something like using a number card to say how many people work for your org. So really simple. We'll store that in a variable called employees. Great. Now, just for the purpose of this example, I'm just going to fill in a blank bot that just represents the contents of your bot. So maybe you'll provide them a knowledge-based query for some software like self-serve support. And I'll just represent that by saying this card represents your bot's conversation. Okay, so now what I'm saying is your bot has now reached the end of the conversation, and you want to do two things. You want to filter the people who work for companies with many dozens of people to your sales team, and you want to filter everyone else to your social channels. You can do that by asking again, which one do you want to do? But the better way to do this is to just use the variable that we stored earlier. So again, I'll use the expression card. If you're looking at the expression card and you're saying, I don't really know what that means, the expression card moves your user along a certain path for a condition that you've defined. So in this case, I'm going to use AI to generate that condition. And I'll say if the variable employees is greater than 50, because remember, that's the cutoff that we have. And I'll just do it again for one down here. And I'll say if the variable employees is less than 50. So now I have both of these cases accounted for. So for more than 50, I'll give them my, here's our AE's phone number, valuable information. But then I don't want to bother my AE for anyone less than that. So I'll say, here are our social channels. And we'll just test this to make sure that it works. So let's say I work for a huge org of 3,500 people. There are not 3,500 people that work at Botpress, I promise you. But you see here we get funneled down the correct path. So this is a great way to just a really simple thing that you can do And so from start, we've asked our user how many people work for that company, and then we funnel them to the right place at the end. And we've used AI to generate this transition. So we didn't actually have to write anything. This is quite a banal or trivial example, like it's very simple, but there are certainly more complex use cases where using AI to generate this expression will work in your favor. It certainly has for me because, like you all know, I am not a programmer. Okay, let me catch up on chat. We'll do like kind of a lightning round because you all blew my expectations. Hello, Robert. I'm trying to create a payment chatbot using WhatsApp, and I would like to know if there was a way to use webhooks when the payment was done and show a summary to a client. I am going to say this is a question for Thursday's stream because this is out of my wheelhouse, but it sounds like I don't see why you wouldn't be able to use like the Stripe API for this, but I may be talking out of my wazoo, so truly who can say? Um, in any case, this might be a question for the developer channel on our server. Pulling utterances from past transcripts has always worked best for my team versus generative AI. Hey, Braxton Mills, yeah, that's a great point. Is like sometimes generative AI can get the utterance wrong, but past transcripts is great. So maybe we can merge those two things so we can use AI based on previous conversation transcripts. These are all beautiful suggestions. How to save conversations between user and bot. I know I need to use summary transcript, but how do I store it best? Oh, hey, Messman. Okay, this is a great question about storing user conversations, storing conversations between user and bot. I'm going to say two things here. Currently, the best way to do this is to use the Botpress inbox, which is a feature that one of our team members, Guillermo, currently built. So that currently lives on the FAQ sec channel of our Discord server. So if you pop over to the FAQ channel, you'll be able to find the current way to do this there. But this like conversation inbox ability to store user conversations is something that a lot of you have asked about. So it's something we're currently building. So you can either you can use that workaround for now, but this will be a built-in feature in Botpress soon. You can use summary agent.transcript and save that variable to a table if that works for you too. A couple of different ways to do that, but again, it's just your preference. How do I connect my Botpress chatbot to a client's Instagram Messenger account? We have there are our documentation on our website about the Instagram integration. So DJCK, I'm not going to say that out loud. You can take a look at our documentation for our integrations. And I'll just pop down here. Oh, so many questions. I wasn't asking about human in the loop, was giving an example of when I would like to jump to a specific part of the flow based on the intent, regardless of where the user's conversation is in the flow. Yeah, so Narukeru, this was the previous topic of conversation is like, you would have to use an intent card for that and maybe just define a global intent for maybe menu, like we have here, like I've shown here, this intent for menu, or whatever it is you'd like to call it, escape or something. Is it possible to watch this webinar on Discord? And YouTube is not possible. Yeah, so you can. We post these recordings on YouTube. They should be higher quality in the future, I think, hopefully. So please bear with us. If a lot of people are looking for payment systems in Botpress, I can make a quick Loom demonstrating it using Stripe to make a payment and continuing the conversation in the chat. Yeah, I would love. So if you lost, I know that you have you worked on a previous video earlier today as well. But we're always looking for people to build out tutorials for other bot builders on our channel. So I think the Stripe API one is certainly something that other people have asked about. So I'm gonna echo Sabrina and say yes, yes, yes. Cool, cool, cool. All right. We are just at time for today, so I want to thank all of you for showing up to this week's stream as usual. If you've got other questions, then please pop them. We always hang out on the Discord server, so pop them in general or help. If you just want to hang out, you're also just welcome to come hang out on our server. I mean, that's what we do. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, depending on what time it is where you are. I will see you all at the basic stream this time, 3 p.m. Eastern next week. I want to say if you want to be pinged when these streams start, just assign yourself the role at the basics stream. You can do this on the channels and roles section on our Discord server. I just shared it in chat for you as well. So yeah, so if you want to be pinged for future streams like this, just assign yourself that role. And if you're listening to this on YouTube in the future, just come to our stream and assign yourself that role. I do want to give a big shout out to the Bot Ambassador program. So our community ambassador program is now live. We're accepting applications. So if you're like a motivated bot builder and you want to help other people build better bots and have better access to early access to beta features and like a bunch of other goodies, then please click that link that Sabrina has just shared in the chat. Would love to see many of you apply for that. Otherwise, I'll see some of you on Jesse's stream on Thursday, which is aimed for developers. That one happens every Thursday at 11 a.m. And I'm going to go eat something. So have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye, and I'll see you all next week.